Well, hey guys, it's Kate. I am here gonna do a quick little Christmas watercolor and line art. So I have my fine liner, a pencil, and a trusty eraser. I've got a piece of watercolor paper here. This could be used for a greeting card or just a cute little fun artwork to do for the holiday season this year. So I'm going to go in first with a really light pencil sketch, and then I'm going to go over it with the fine liner, and then I'm going to go over that with my watercolor. So just make sure that if you do this with a fine liner, use something that's going to be waterproof after it dries. With all that said, let's get started. So I was thinking of what I wanted to illustrate, and I think I'd like to do a little North Pole sign that's on a candy cane. And so I'm going to start in with the candy cane shape, and that's going to be the main part, and I'm just making this real sketchy. I'm not being really careful about anything. And I'm going to have kind of like those wooden signs that you have going across, and I'm making it uneven like one of those board signs that's been weathered. So I'm going to take my eraser and just get rid of this pencil mark from my candy cane. Just like that. Then this is going to be along some kind of path. So I'm going to have it coming up around this way and maybe put some rocks in there. Just some gravel on the stone, just to show that this is kind of a walking area. And behind my sign, I'm going to put a couple of big pine trees, and I'm going to come right in from the side, just like that. And then another one, let's go right here. And I'm just going to have these go just like that. And so I like this sketch how it is. And so I'm going to start going over it with my fine liner. And I'm going to work on the stuff closest in the foreground first. So I'm going to put in some of these little rocks that I sketched in along the pathway. Just like this. I'm going to do just a couple little scattered around, give it some texture, like that. And then I'm going to put in my line for the back of the path. And I think I'm just going to keep the path just like that. And then my candy cane. Just like that. And my wood sign. Like that. And last but not least, my pine trees. And I'm going to have it coming out here. And this pine tree, I'm going to have ending right next to that road. And the rest of it will be coming right there. Now, I'm going to have the bottom of my pine tree on this one coming through that side. So that's the basic illustration. Now, I'm going to just sketch North Pole real quick. Make sure I can fit everything in. And it's going to be just handwriting like somebody painted it on there. like that. And last but not least, we're going to need some stripes. My hand squeaks on the table. That looks pretty good to me. So, time for the watercolor, but first I'm just going to go over this real easy with my eraser to get rid of the extra pencil marks. I went really light on the pencil so it won't be hard to erase over my sketch. And then all I'll be left with is the Fineliner. But you just never know if things will turn out just the way you want it. So I like going over with the pencil first. Now I'm working on watercolor paper, but if you're pretty easy with the eraser, it should still be fine with your watercolor. I'm just going over just everything easy. If you have a kneadable eraser, that would work too. And I just want to make sure the pencil is as faded as I can make it. Or gone altogether. That looks pretty good. Okay, let me grab my watercolors and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm ready with my watercolor. I have everything in frame. I've got my water here, MeiLiang water palette, my card, paper towels, and I have a script liner brush, Princeton Neptune. This is a number 1, a number 8 round brush, and a number 4 round brush. So whatever you have on hand works, but just depends on how much detail you'll put in. You might need a smaller brush, but we'll see. So I have my spray bottle of water. I'm just going to go over my palette to moisten up all my watercolors. All right. And then I'm going to do this wet on dry. I'm going to grab this brush first. Now you want to be a little bit strategic. Now you can paint this really loose and let all your colors kind of bleed together. I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum. So you just want to be a little bit strategic of where you're putting your color. So I'm going to start with the sky. That's sort of the biggest thing. Then I'm going to kind of move down to the bottom. So let's get started. For the sky, I really like this color here. It's called Deep Interference Green, and this is the metallics. And I just thought it would be really neat to have a bit of sparkle in that sky. And so that's what we're going to do with this. So I'm just going to kind of turn this to the side to make it easier for me to work on. And I'm going to start dropping in that color. And hopefully you can see everything. And I'm just going to dip into the water and spread this around a bit and keep it kind of light. And then as I get close to the trees, I'm just going to go a little bit easy around the edges of the trees where I have my outline. And I'm going to drop in a little bit extra color as I go. Just like that. And here too, I'm just going to kind of go carefully around where I did my outlines. I'm not too wet. If your brush is too wet, you can always blot it on your paper towel and pick up some extra water from your page. Because if this dries quickly, it won't do a lot of bleeding and you can finish it faster. But this should do it. Now, if you're following along with me, there's going to be a couple of little extra spots down below right here, and you'll want to drop some color in there too. And you don't have to be too careful if you don't want to be. This is really just a fun project, so you can be as loose as you like. Most of the time I really like the sketchy kind of look and not too concerned about painting really loose, but for this one I guess I can stay inside the lines a little bit, right? Now I'm going to go in just a little bit with this other interference color just to get a little bit of a different interest in the sky, and I'm just going to drop it into a couple of places like that. Not too much. Just add a little bit of texture in there. And so I'm going to let that dry and move on to a different area of the painting. So I'm going to work on this little path. And so I'm kind of imagining it as being kind of like a dirt, gravelly path. So I'm going to go into some of my brown. This is, I'm looking at my swatch sheet, is yellow sienna. And it's kind of a lighter color. I might mix some burnt sienna in with it to darken it up just a little bit. And I'm going to come in here and work on my path. Just like this. And I'm kind of going around my rocks a little bit, but I don't mind if I get a little bit in there, because I'm going to be kind of going over with a darker color for the rocks anyway, so it's not too much of a concern for me. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to dip into this one. This is burnt sienna, and it's kind of dark. And I'm just going to drop in just a little bit extra here for texture and let that kind of do its thing, just like that. Okay, my sky is pretty much, well, it's high and dry. So let's go in and paint some more stuff. So I'm getting my bigger brush again. This is my number 8 round, and I'm going to go in first to the Deep Hooker's Green right here. And I'm going to put some of that in my palette. But what I also want to do for these trees, and I'm going to water this down a bit, and I also want to go into this tree green. It's a lighter green, and I'm going to put that over here to the side as well and mix some of that up a bit. So I'm going to go into my trees and kind of mix those two colors so there's some variation. And I'm going to start with this lighter color and go around some of these edges just like this and kind of scatter it around. And I'm going to go into this deep green. And I'm going to go in and just kind of fill in the gaps. Now you want to work while your paint is pretty wet so it has nice blending. And I'm just going to go carefully again around my edges here. And I'm going to quickly dip into this darker green. And I'm not really being careful about where I put the green. I just want there to be some variation with it. And I really like how that's looking. And I'm just dipping back and forth into each color. Scampy says hello. She is making her appearance in tonight's video. And so just going through here again, getting around this line. And this is looking good to me. And I really like using the two different greens for this tree, just adds that extra bit of interest, and it'll keep working and spreading as this dries. Yes, Scampy. You're a good girl. If I keep talking to her, she'll keep mowing. So I'll try to keep it to a minimum. This is her time for pets, usually. All right, I'm not going to go back up into there because then I'll just get a bunch of cauliflower blooms. So I'm going to start on the other tree and do the same thing. And just kind of follow the lines that I made originally. And then I'll just dip back and forth between my two greens and get some variation here. Just like this. It's easy peasy. And if you're working, you don't have to leave your card or paper the same way. I really have an easier time working from the right. So if you need to turn your thing upside down to get to it, do it. Because that'll just make it easier to paint. So you should do whatever feels the most comfortable. You don't mind watching upside down, right? I'm almost done with this little side. What do you guys think? I think that looks pretty good. All right. And then I've got one more little side over here. Just like this. And I'm going to do this last little bit with the light green. And blot some off on my paper towel. There's a little too much on here. Oops. Let me take that up. So if that happens and you have a little bit of bleed, just take a little bit of paper towel and give it a blot. And it should lift right out. And then you can go back in and just correct your paint. Like that. Nice. Okay, so I think next up I'm going to grab my smaller round brush. And I'm going to come down to these rocks. And for those, I'm going to go into this darker burned brown in my palette, and it's number 609. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix it with some of this green. What the heck, right? All right, so let's go in here. And we have that nice contrast with the rocks. And just going in with my brush and staying in there. I'm going to get these little ones here with the darker color. Not being too careful, but just trying to get inside the lines as best I can. Grab some more paint. And just fill in these shapes that I drew. And then I'm going to go back into this road. I dabbed a little bit of this brown. I'm just going to add some more interest here. So I'm going to add a little bit of water and dip in here with my brown. Just like that. And then I'll just leave that to dry. All right. Okay, I'm pretty much dry, so I'm going to come back in again. Now, one of the colors that always loves to spread, for me anyway, I don't know if it's the same in your experience, is the red. I'm going to get my red stripes and my candy cane now and just get those out of the way so they have time to dry. So I'm going to come into my deep magenta over here with my smaller brush and start working on those stripes. And I'm going to come right in here. I'm going to blot a little bit because I've got quite a bit of paint on my brush. And I'm just going to get inside these lines and hope that nothing actually bleeds. All right, I'm going to get this little corner piece too. Just like that. And this is a great way to kind of practice your brushwork too, getting in sort of these little nooks and crannies. It's definitely giving me some practice for sure. And it's progress, not perfection, right? And so it's turning out pretty good. I really like how this is looking. And I'm just going here, getting my stripes. Now, one thing I was thinking about is I have this really beautiful silvery kind of metallic, where it's like an iridescent in this palette, and I think I might use that mixed with just a little bit of blue for the ground. Kind of like a snowy ground, but just a really faint light blue. I think that would look nice. What do you think? I'm going to come, just give it a little bit of a darker color here. Come in and blot that bit that went into my sign. And a little bit of a darker color here. Just like that. Nice. And get that blotted. All right. And I think that's what I'll do. So I'm going to use this clear space up here and grab some of this iridescent silvery color. Isn't this pretty? Let me see if I can get it. You can really see the sparkle on it. I really love it. And you can't even tell it's on my palette there. I'm going to grab just a little bit of this blue here. Yeah, I think that looks really nice. And we'll just go in and do this ground. And that'll give that a lot of extra sparkle. Because you got to have sparkle on the Christmas cards or paintings that you do. It's not Christmas if there's no sparkle, right? And once this is done, I'll hold it up so you can see it. It just really looks pretty. And I'm going to do the same over on this side. And I am putting this on kind of thick, just because I really want that iridescence on the final painting. So, nice. All right. And I might go in just with a hint of other blue. Just like that. And just add a couple little things here and there. Great. I think this is coming along, don't you? Now, while we're there, the last thing I have is this sign, but I'm going to let that red dry there just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is come back into these rocks. I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow ochre and just give them a little bit more color and drop it right in there. And it's hard to tell, but there is a little bit more color going in. And I might put some in the pathway too. And I'm just kind of blotting off some excess. That looks pretty good to me. What do you think so far? I think I'm just going to blend all this for my sign. I hate to have paint go to waste, so that looks like a pretty good color. So, moment of truth, let's go into it. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to slow down as I get to my edges. Grab just a little bit of extra water and blot that so I can spread this paint a little bit. That looks good. Nice. I'm just kind of going over a little bit some of these areas. I don't want to overwork it. So that looks pretty good. I'll just drop just a little bit in here around the edge that I missed. And I think we can call that pretty good. Yeah. All right. Now we're cooking with fire. So I'm going to pause this. Well, pause it for you for about half a second. Come right back when this dries, and then I'm going to go in with some colored pencils next and give it some more detail. I'll see you soon. All right, I'm back. I got my fresh cup of tea, ready to go in with some colored pencils and my white pen. So you really could leave it just like this, and it's perfectly cute. If you want to go an extra step, you can add just some extra details and shading and stuff with your colored pencils or pens or whatever you have on hand. Crayola works, anything. You can even use markers. Sorry, I took a sip. So I'm going to go in. So I am going to add just a little bit of extra sort of shadows and highlights. So I think what I want to do is kind of think like the light's coming from that direction. So I'm going to have highlights on this side, shadows on this side, and just very basic. So I picked up this sort of really dark maroon burgundy red color, and I'm just going to add some extra marks in the red here and just kind of blend that in with the watercolor and just give it a little bit of extra, a little extra special something. And I'm just going to do that right along the edges. I'm going to press harder toward the side and then ease up as I get closer to the middle, just like that. And I'm just going to do the same thing up. Now, if my sun is kind of coming from that direction, when I get to these top ones, my shadow is really going to be underneath. Like that. Yeah. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to grab my dark brown and I am going to add a little bit of shadow to the bottom of this sign and maybe even a little under it. And I'm going to lighten that up too. But I kind of want to add just some wood grain texture as well. And I'm just going to put in some sort of sketchy lines here to make it look a little bit more like wood. Does that make sense? And just keep it just like that. And then I'm also going to go under some of these rocks. And this whole candy cane. And just add in just sort of a touch of shadow around here. And I'm just going light with the pencil, obviously not being too careful about anything, just adding a little bit of extra detail. And I'm going to do the same thing with the trees. And so I've got this dark green, and I'm just going to kind of come in under the trees. And kind of follow these lines a little bit and ease it out. Like that. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now, do I have a gray? I don't really have a gray, so I won't be able to do really any shading on the side of the candy cane, but that's okay. Actually, what I might be able to do is come in with this kind of peachy color. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good, actually. What do you think? And I'm just going really light. Looks good to me. Yeah. I like that a lot. I'm going to come back in here at the bottom with this red, dark red a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with my white pen. I think I'm done with this. I'm going to leave the trees just like they are. And I'm going to come right in here. Make sure my pen works. Come right in here and do some real basic, just a couple of little simple hints. Just like that. And then maybe a couple here. These pens, I really like them, but they don't seem to want to work sometimes when you're going over like watercolor. I don't know. Do you guys ever have that experience? And I'm just being just little hints. You know what I'm saying? Just hints. And you know what? I think we could use some snow, although I don't know how much it's going to really work. Let's just go over, have some fresh snow coming down. And it doesn't really show up in the sky, but just a little hint, and that's okay. And I'm going to kind of add a little bit of snowy white look down here too. It's hard to see. It doesn't really want to write that well, but that's okay. Well, what do you think of that? I think this turned out really cute. I would write home about this and put it on a postcard and mail it. Hope you like this video and enjoyed doing this with me. Hopefully you joined along or just listened for some relaxation. And I will be back soon with another video. So until next time, you know what to do.